Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to my new video where we are going to be going over my top 5 tips I think every single Viego player needs to know. Now, he is a new champion as I'm currently releasing this video. I think it's been out for a couple of days, and I wanted to put this video out just so people can get a good understanding of the champion before they take him into solo queue, before maybe you encounter getting a first-time Viego in your solo queue. Hopefully they watch this video, and if they perform poorly, maybe link this video, maybe help them out a little bit. So, my goal behind this video is to give you a better understanding of the champion, as well as to make you a better League of Legends player as a whole. I'm going to put timestamps at every single point in my video, so it's very easy to navigate. They're going to be up top, as well as the scrolling bar down below is going to be segmented into a bunch of different tips. If you want to contact me directly with any questions, I heavily encourage that. I always try and help you guys out as much as possible. I'm going to put a pinned comment down below with a link to my Discord. And finally, I'm a little bit limited with this format, only doing 5 tips, so I heavily encourage you guys, particularly because he's a newer champion as I'm releasing this video, to put your own tips down below, because not everything is 100% set in stone, including his playstyle, role, and runes. Now, with all that out of the way, let's jump into tip number 1. Alright, and jumping into tip number 1 for Viego, we are going to talk about the best way to get a lot of experience under your belt. This is strictly for people that have just started to pick up Viego. You really want to play the least difficult version of Viego. There are a couple different ways, there are a couple different scalings. If you did not know, there's an AP scaling coming out of his W, E, and Q, and there's also crit scaling out of his R. So there's a couple people trying out the different crit builds, different sustain builds, and a different kind of strange AP support I saw a couple times. But this bruiser build is really going to be the best setup for you because it's going to be very forgiving. It's going to allow you to learn the champion at a lot higher rate because you're going to have more uptime, and you're going to be able to live a lot longer in team fights than you would as a very squishy assassin or maybe a AP type support Viego champion. So I heavily recommend that you pick up the bruiser build. Now, he does work extremely well with the Gore Drinker because he has a dash in, he has a movement speed increase, and he has just a good amount of damage coming out of his kit, and he has a little bit of a mini dash coming out of his R. Gore Drinker is going to be extremely effective, particularly against very melee heavy champions. Sterix is going to be great because it might give you that little bit of shielding that you might just need to really get and possess someone on the enemy team. I think Death Stance is really great against AD to heavy teams, and the ability haste is great. Deadman's Plate for a bit of mobility can be very strong, and a Hydra item can be very hyper effective. If you did not know, Viego has a little bit of a weaker clear currently, so a Tiamat item can really help him bump up his clear timing and speeds, as well, as long as you follow kind of just the basic bruiser route. You can't really go too wrong with Viego. Next up, we're going to go over the runes. Conquer is a must for this setup. Overheal is really nice because you can proc it even without lifesteal, just with your basic healing coming out of your Q. And then we have, you can go attack speed is pretty nice, tenacity against a lot of CC, and if you want a little bit more sustain, I think Last Stand is very strong with the bruiser build because usually you are the focus of a lot of the enemy's damage. And then again, just a bit of sustain coming out of the domination, and always want to make sure to get a little bit of attack speed out of your runes because this is going to really help you just amp up your clear time speed if you're playing jungle or your just early trades when you are playing Viego. And that will wrap up tip number 1. Alright, and getting into tip number 2, we are going to talk a little bit about ganking patterns or roaming patterns if you're playing them out of a solo lane or a support lane. So, a very common mistake that I see a lot of lower elo players doing is that they are using their hero path, get a little bit of movement and speed increase, and then they are Wing in just like that. So, how you want to look to actually play out these roams or these ganks is you want to use your E to close as much distance as possible. You want to get as close as possible, and then you can start autoing and queuing, doing as much damage as you can, and waiting to use your W until they use a mobility spell to get away from you. Because the last thing you want to do is blow your entire load before the enemy uses their mobility to get away. So you just want to kind of wait and bait out their flashes and then punish it with the W dash. And this will just be the most effective way of playing out these fights because you are really maximizing the potential of every single spell and what it can do. And post 6 ganks are going to get a little bit easier because you're able to get pretty much a mini flash on your R and really follow up even more, so you can save these two W and R for when the enemy tries to run away from you. So just try and close as much distance with your E, and then W and R to punish any kind of mobility spells that they are doing. If they do not have any mobility spells, it is completely fine to just W in if you already know that they do not have any dash and they do not have any flash. And that will wrap up tip number 2 for Viego. Alright, and getting into tip number 3, we're going to cover a couple very small things when you are playing Viego. The first thing is whenever you are playing him, you need to take full advantage of your extremely good movement speed. He doesn't have the best clear, he doesn't have the best dueling early, but what he does have is a lot of mobility, and his ability to roam is just going to be very, very nice with your E. If you did not know, if you throw your E against the wall, say you're a top laner and you're looking to go back up into top lane, you are going to be able to just get an increased movement speed buff all the way down for almost as long as the duration is going to be there. So keep this in mind when playing Viego, that you always want to take full advantage of your Herald path, and this will allow you to close the gap on people and be in places that they do not expect you. And this is where a lot of kills can really come from when you're playing Viego, is by coming from very unexpected angles and being in places that they just really do not expect. Now, the next small tip that I wanted to go over real quick: when you are trading against an enemy, say that he is consistently dodging your W. It is a very obvious type of skill that people are a bit used to because of Pike. It is a little bit similar as a stun and as opposed to a hook. But if say you are getting dodged out on a lot of your heartbreakers, say they may be flashing every single one of your heartbreakers that you're able to get on them, what you can look to do is you can do a tap W into an R. As if you did not know, with the tap W, it still gives you a little bit of a micro stun, similar to what Akali's R1 used to be before she got nerfed. And this will allow you the cast time and reduce the amount of time that they have to react to your R. So always being able to stun out an enemy before throwing out an R can be an extremely effective way to play out your trades, because it's going to minimize their ability to flash out. And that will wrap up tip number 3. Alright, and getting into tip number 4, I'm going to talk a little about how to optimally play out team fights when you are looking to pick up Viego as a champion. And the key when you are playing this champion, particularly when you're in top lane and you have access to a teleport flank, you really want to look to flank as much as possible. Now, one big thing I really want to go over with you guys, if you did not know, if you look at the E skill shot, if it does not contact a wall, it will not roam around and give you that very nice increased amount of mist to go around and have the increased movement speed, increased attack speed, and be camouflaged. So missing your E on a wall can be a very, very just devastating way to lose out on a lot of combat power. So whenever you are looking to flank, make sure that you're hitting a wall that's close by and then running in. Now, you're obviously going to be able to augment these flanks by buying sweepers and getting pink wards, taking full advantage of Scryer Blooms, but always look to take full advantage of being able to flank at a pretty reasonable rate with Viego, because he has a very nice kit for flanking, giving you increased movement speed and 2 dashes. The last thing you would want to do on Viego particularly is, if you're a little bit squishy in the early game, maybe you only have a Gorginker and a Ravenous Hydra running straight at the enemies. They know exactly what you are looking to do. Ideally, when you're playing Viego, you want to get on some of the squishier targets and really start cleaving the enemy down with some AoE Q attacks, hitting some Ws, and really just getting a very, very large Heartbreaker that hits quite a few enemy champions. So always keep in mind that whenever it is possible for you to flank in team fights, to do it. This is going to increase your overall win rate. I'm not going to say it's going to increase it by a crazy amount, but if you're consistently looking for flanks in team fights, I wouldn't be surprised if you had an increased win rate of a couple percents when you are picking up Viego. And that will wrap up tip number 4. Alright, getting into the final tip, we're going to talk about ult optimization. First small tip, you can R over a wall. It is very different than the W, where you're only able to throw your stun over. You aren't able to dash over any kind of wall. You're only able to R over if you want to. Next up, it is a very, very powerful skill in the current meta. I know Viego's release state hasn't really wowed too many people. It hasn't been just a huge juggernaut that's destroying everyone right now, but I think this skill is going to be extremely effective in the meta after he gets a couple of buffs, because what it allows you to do is isolate a particular target with extremely low health and knock back other enemy champions. It's also going to synergize well with things like Yasuo that really thrive off of knockups. Also things like Samira that can get a little bit of bonus attack damage on enemy targets that have been knocked up, or things like Swain that can take advantage of his passive when you displace an enemy target. So the Heartbreaker is really going to allow you to focus those hyper-scaling, annoying ADC champions that rely on movement speed to get away from you because you are putting such a huge slow on that target. Now, the ADCs in particular that I'm talking about are Jhin and Kai'Sa. Jhin getting an increased amount of movement speed after doing a crit, and Kai'Sa getting increased movement speed out of your E. Your Heartbreaker is just going to be such a great tool to focus out an enemy champion, so you really want to respect this skill and really be looking to use it in the most opportune moment in the different team fights to really get that high value target in a very, very unfortunate situation. That'll wrap up my final tip, guys. If you have any questions for me, you can hit me up in the comments down below, and as always, take it easy.